The ambition of our project is to trigger a step change in how the research community thinks about where, how, and by whom mental health in low and middle income countries can be impacted. And our long-term strategic aim is to accelerate global action on mental health by producing a global mental health impact framework with potential for use in all research in developing countries.
So Indonesia in a long-term crisis of care for people with mental illness, like this scene we capture of a woman we saw in the island of Flores in the eastern part of Indonesia. Physical restraint, or what is known locally as pasung, is still happening in many parts of the country. Years of pasung would lead to muscular atrophy from immobility. Their mental health also deteriorated further. It is a gross violation of human rights. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated problem. Based on the National Health Survey released a couple of years ago, approximately 450,000 people live with severe mental illness, and 14% of them have experienced pasung in one form or another in their lifetime. The human right in mental health movement, Free Pasung movement that the government launched, has been one of the powerful drivers for a new mental health law ratified in 2014 in Indonesia, which criminalized the practice of pasung. But in reality, enforcement is hard. Oftentimes it is a communal decision to restrain someone considered a danger to themselves or others.
Another important ethical issue to consider, it was very important in the work after being in Indonesia, was about how can we actually support the people involved. We were based in 4 sites, very different sites. We were working with people who had experienced mental health issues, usually severe mental illness, as well as a form of human rights abuses.
Mental health literacy. As many of you probably know, this construct has been knocking around for over 20 years in the global north, originated by Jorm and his colleagues. It's to do with the ability to recognize specific disorders or different types of psychological distress, knowledge about risk factors and causes, knowledge about self-help interventions, knowledge about the professional help available, attitudes which facilitate recognition, and knowledge of how to seek mental health information. Now, this is embedded within a kind of medico-psychotherapeutic tradition characteristic of what we might call the global north, or what some people would call the West. So one of the important questions is whether this necessarily works in low to middle income countries with different intellectual and spiritual traditions. Nevertheless, the problem of mental health in India suggests that it is important to engage in mental health promotion, recognition of problems, care and support, to support the rights of people with mental health problems, and to try and work to reduce stigma. So one of the things we were trying to do is to conduct a feasibility study as an important part of our research about how best to promote a culturally appropriate notion of mental health literacy using participatory approaches and using theatre. So there's a team photograph of one of our field visits towards the end of 2019.
We developed a mental health literacy questionnaire that was actually adapted to the Kerala population and both in English and Malayalam, the regional language. We also produced 6 digital stories based on the narratives from the interviewees, and which is actually on our website. We also produced 18 short films. Our original idea was to develop theatre pieces, but obviously that was not possible because of the pandemic. So we resorted to the mode of short films by well-known film directors in Kerala that looks at urban and rural Kerala and based on the real stories of people from all those communities. We also are producing 4 documentaries representing the views of urban, rural, and tribal communities. We also have something called a Me Help app that people can actually download and look at the mental health literacy angles. And we are also developing a mental health literacy handbook for grassroots organizations and district mental health services.
We will be talking about using photos and images to support communication of difficult experiences. I'm going to talk specifically about ways in which we've used photographic methods and participatory poster making. And this is with young people. There's two strands of the project. There's young people who are in recovery from substance addiction. And there's other people, young people who, because they're in a high risk area, they are at risk of substance misuse, but they don't use substances. And we conducted photo voice interviews with many of these youth. There's an example at the top of a photograph where it shows the array of pictures that people might bring. I'd like to give you an example. There's him with his peers that he uses substances with, and there's a sense of him really wanting to belong with these people, and that's how he speaks about that in his interview, of really wanting to belong. And then in the next picture, this is a picture he actually selected just from a Google search. It's a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, and the caption is, "Give yourself time." So in conclusion, using photo images both therapeutically and in research purposes can provide insight into experience.
I think, when we talk about the healing process, it is individual as well as collective, and it always helps to build relationship between people, and not only with the people, but also a community as a whole. So we have a very holistic and collective way of looking at it, and photo images has helped us to do so, and the big picture has definitely shown us the way to go about it. The participants who were with us, they definitely expressed that it was healing for them. So I think at the end, we would like to say that collectively we can do a lot of work while going on and not saying anything much, but yet saying a lot more. So a picture paints 1,000 words.
We're going to be telling you about a study we've conducted, exploring if there is potential to embed psychosocial well-being impact across global challenges research where the primary aims are not mental health related. We're using the case study of the UK Global Challenges Research Fund, the GCRF. To date, over 1,200 grants have been awarded. Of these GCRF grants, we selected 36 which did not have as their main aim mental health impact. We selected these 36 for diversity across Research Council, across the GCRF strategic challenge portfolios, which relate to the Sustainable Development Goals, and across the different regions of the world using the World Health Organization categorization. And these 36 non-mental health GCRF projects were coded independently by 2 researchers from a team of 14.
Right, so the first research question is really to look at how the GCRF projects sort of self-categorize or identify themselves as engaging with mental health. Really, like, this information is important to establish the relevant context because, the GCRF projects address challenges mainly faced by developing countries. So we need to see what is the investment, the engagement, and the interest in sort of positioning mental health in these researches. And then we move on to really looking more in depth at the potential of these GCRF projects, which are essentially non-mental health projects, to engage with psychosocial well-being impacts. And, most interestingly, perhaps, to look at the opportunities to impact psychosocial well-being within the target groups of these research projects with only some very minor changes made to the project.
This project is a follow-on project from a whole series of work that we've done in digital heritage and trying to apply this in new and exciting ways. So a lot of our background research is around the capture of monuments and objects and trying to use these in ways, visualizing them with museums and trying to engage the public with research. And we've been doing this for a number of years.
So we took and created renderings of places in Syria. This is the Temple of Bel, and what this allows is, in virtual reality, as you can see here, people to wander around these environments and really fully interact with them. And that allows somebody to become immersed, and it starts this recollection process.
Although we might think quite generically about the concept of a Syrian refugee, what we actually know is that because we're from distributed areas and even within the same areas you get different political and cultural contexts, that we have got subcultural tensions arising, and that we know that this can be a cause of the social cohesion issues, can be a cause of underlying personal security issues, and ultimately impacts on well-being and mental health.
I'm the principal investigator on an AHRC GCRF Network Plus project called Changing the Story, Building Inclusive Civil Societies with and for Young People in Post-Conflict Settings. So the aim of this project is to basically to look at how civil society organisations of all shapes and sizes are using arts and heritage in order to develop kind of inclusive, youth-led projects in post-conflict settings in order to, as we say there, build strong institutions that can support communities to deliver sustained social justice. A big chunk of what we've done is looking at how this kind of work can uncover and amplify hidden histories. This is a slide from an exhibition produced by street artists in Zimbabwe to amplify the history of the Tonga community, who are kind of excluded from the sort of the mainstream national narrative. This is another project, a testimony project where we worked with young people who interviewed former child soldiers that were part of FARC in Colombia, talking about their experiences of being child soldiers in the Civil War. And so the child soldiers now are all kind of adults, are all in their 40s, but they were being interviewed by kids that were their age when they were soldiers or when they were first soldiers. We've also done a lot of work around youth leadership. So one project we've been working on in South Africa, we've been working with so-called safe parks, which are after-school clubs in Ekurhuleni, which is a city on the outskirts, just sort of outside of Johannesburg, where we've been developing a youth leadership program using participatory arts as the kind of stimulus to help people think about issues that are important to them, that they want to raise awareness of. So we've run loads of different projects and in lots of different countries. And I think it's fair to say that mental health issues are everywhere in our work.
I think working with this big team, the important thing for me is how to be a part of very big research community, because in my PhD, I almost working myself and my supervisor. So as part of a big research team, it's very important to me to learn how to coordinate with others. I think it's very important and very new to me.
There's numerous things I've learned as a mentee. Seeing a qualitative researcher with much more experience than myself in action that's really helped my own research. So I've taken that directly, and the skills I've seen come across directly, and applied that in my own work, which has really been helpful. The other thing is seeing partnerships and relationships from the other side. I'm so used to being out in the field, and now working from the UK and working in partnership from this perspective. That has been challenging at times, and I've seen what it's like then for an organisation in the United Kingdom, like their processes, their ways of working, and how they relate to partners on the ground.
This role allowed me to participate in several training, which were really brilliant, because it's training I always wanted to do, and there was never the right time or sufficient funding. So I've done several trainings in attachment. I also did further training in assessing mother and infant's mental health. And I feel all of these additional training will support my future path and career as a growing researcher.
I just want to draw attention to our partner organisation representatives, Purnima Mola from NIMHANS in India, Sangeeta Goswami, President of Mind India, and Diana Setiwati from the Universitas Gadjah Mada. I also want to say a special thank you to our project mentees, Una Higgins, Natalie Shlom and Yao Zhao.